Hey guys, it's Gwen. Welcome back. Today I'm talking about the story time about my first kidney failure. So let's get into it. If you guys didn't know, I have a kidney condition. It's called medullary sponge kidney, or better known as MSK, and it's a birth defect. It affects you your whole life. Normally it starts affecting you at 20 or in your 20s, but for me it started affecting me at 15. And basically I get kidney stones in a different place than where most people get kidney stones, and I have to have surgeries for them and a lot of scans. I end up in the hospital a lot, but yeah. So today is all about my first ever big surgery and how I ended up having kidney failure from it. I moved to Oregon when I was 15, and I'd already had a kidney stone at that point, and I had had a few more, and so I got connected with a urologist, and he explained that based on what he saw, which was like 20 kidney stones in each kidney, he thought I had MSK. But he didn't officially diagnose me yet. He said he wanted to do what's called a ureteroscopy, and I'm probably not saying that totally right, so don't kill me in the comments. But it's a ureteroscopy, which I'll explain. It's a procedure to address kidney stones. It involves the passage of a small telescope called a ureteroscope through the urethra and the bladder and up to the ureter where the stone is located. If the stone is small, it may be snared with a small basket device and removed whole. If the stone is large or the ureter is narrow, which is the tube connecting from the bladder to the kidney, then it will be lasered into tiny pieces and removed then, or it passes through a stent. Now this surgery procedure is done under general anesthesia, and I was 16 and a half at the time, so I had the procedure done on both kidneys, and it was explained to me that my kidneys aren't necessarily going to react the same way, and it's not going to be the exact same procedure that you read about online because my kidneys were different. So he did the procedure, and it didn't go as well as we were hoping. I had to have stents placed, which I will explain what those are. So a ureteral stent, almost always placed after a ureteroscopy, but definitely after one that was difficult or didn't go as planned. It's a small tube called a ureteral stent, and it helps pass drainage pee through the tube that it's in your ureter. It's called a ureteral stent, so it's in the tube that's connected from your kidney to your bladder. So it's a tube put inside the tube that's already in your body. But it helps pass pee and stone fragments. So after my surgery, I got stents placed in both kidneys, and for about 3 weeks I was bedridden. It hurt to do anything from standing up to showering to getting dressed to going downstairs was probably the most painful thing. And when you have stents, when you pee, it burns. It burns like hell. It feels like someone has lit your vagina on fire. It feels like someone hit your vagina with a hammer over and over and over again, which is probably why they compare it to giving birth, because when you have stents, it burns way more. And so that happened for about 2 to 3 weeks. I was on Oxy at that time. It was around the clock, so every couple hours I was taking pain meds, and I remember this day very clearly. and I'm gonna try not to get emotional at all in the video, but I might. So this was around May, I think, of 2016. It was my 3rd week of recovery. I had been downstairs on the couch watching a show, and I was getting ready to eat, but it was time to take the stents out. And for those of you that have never been through it, it's very hard to imagine or picture this, but basically these are very, very small tubes that get put in your ureter for the drainage and all of that. And so the tubes are inside your tubes, and then they go all the way through your bladder, and then there's a string that gets tied on the outside to you. And so usually either a doctor will pull them out, or you'll get told you can pull them out yourself. I was told I could pull them out myself, and so I got into the bathtub and I cut the string, and then I pulled them out myself, and I started bleeding. And sometimes you do bleed and that's normal, and sometimes you bleed and it's not normal. And so I was bleeding. Automatically I started to feel a lot more pain. And at that point I was already in a lot of pain, so any more pain kind of put me over the edge. But I started to get more pain, and I went back downstairs on the couch, and my mom called my doctor and asked if she could give me more pain meds than I was supposed to be on, because my pain was not stopping, and so she gave me more. And I started throwing up and dry heaving. I got to the point where like I was on the floor with a bucket, and I was just dry heaving and dry heaving and dry heaving and crying at the same time and yelping in pain. And so my mom called my surgeon and explained to him what was going on, and all he said was to get me to the hospital. And so my mom drove me to the closest hospital, and right away they gave me an IV, fluids, they did an ultrasound to see what was going on with my kidney, and they gave me lots of pain meds. Then they said that my kidney was failing. They said my kidney was not functioning at its normal level, and the explanation for that is most of the time when they say your kidney's failing after an operation like that, it just means that a piece of a stone or a stone itself is stuck. And so when I removed the stents, a piece of stone was going with it, and it got stuck, and so your kidney starts to swell up and fail. So I had to get into the ambulance, and they drove me to the bigger hospital in Oregon, and my surgeon was already there. I got admitted. I got an IV with even stronger pain meds than I was already on. They did a CT, and they planned for surgery that day, but I didn't end up having surgery that day. I had it the next morning, and after my surgery my kidney was no longer failing. Thank God for that, because that isn't always the case. But yeah, and then I had to stay for a couple of days to recover, and for pain management, because they weren't sure I was going to be able to manage my pain at home. Anyway, after a few days I was able to go home, and it took me a couple months to get to the point where I was exercising, hanging out with friends and stuff like that. But the reason I do like the surgery, even for people with my case, is because after these stones are removed, there's almost a weight lifted off of your kidneys, and from that surgery, I've always had left chronic kidney pain, and it's a struggle I deal with every single day, and I don't regret having that surgery, because without it, I wouldn't have been able to do even the little amount of high school that I did do. I worked my ass off to be able to graduate, and I'm proud of myself that I did, but without a couple of those surgeries, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. There's one thing I wanted to share with you guys. This is from chicagouniversity.edu or something like that. It's an article written by a doctor who talks about kidney stones and the procedures. And this says, because the ureter is delicate and easily torn and injured when overstretched, there is risk. In a recent publication by thar that describes 359 consecutive cases of ureteroscopy where a ureteral access sheath was used, which is like stents and other things like that, nearly half, 46.5% of the patients had some degree of ureteral injury. So that means half of patients have kidney damage from this, and your ureters. Most injuries were superficial, but severe injuries were found in 13.3%. Okay, so that describes kidney damage, and that's one thing that my doctor was explaining to me about the difference between me having this surgery and other people having this surgery. So other people just have kidney stones and they get them removed. I have kidney stones stuck in the ducts of my kidneys, and those I have removed. And so I already have kidney damage, and so this surgery that I've had multiple times damages my kidney each time. But it's also something that brings me relief of pain. After a couple months of recovering, I get like 2 to 3 months where I feel almost normal, and that's why I believe in having the surgery done. The other thing I wanted to share was, all agree one needs follow-up imaging of the kidneys to tell whether or not stones have been fully removed and whether or not a ureteral stricture, which is a scar, has caused obstruction and kidney swelling, or better known as hydronephrosis, a complication that occurs 1 to 4% of the time. Okay. That part makes me want to cry, because it says 1 to 4% of the time. And I was that 1 to 4%. That's what they called my kidney failing, was that I had an obstruction and hydronephrosis, which is just your kidney swelling because there's a stone stuck in the tube, and it's just like when you put a rock in a straw, you know, you can't get the water through. It's the same thing, same exact thing, but your kidney will fail. And it's already hard for me to believe that I was one of the younger cases with MSK, because it started at 15 and not in my 20s. But then to also hear that one of my first major surgeries, I was 1 in 4% that got that complication, also is crazy to me. That was my story time on kidney failure and what happened to me, how I dealt with it. It's not always a story that I'm, proud to tell or happy to tell, but at the same time, it's a big part of my life, and it's something that I had to overcome and figure out how to deal with while being a high schooler. And I did it. I still graduated, and I still had a fun senior year and an interesting junior year. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned some stuff, and yeah, I'll see you next week.